Welcome to the Media Buying War Room, where the top 1% of vetted media buyers break down what's actually working for them in paid ads right now. I'm Matteo, founder of MediaBuyer.com. Today, our top media buyers are breaking down navigating account bans and what to do when your account gets banned. They each share their own perspective. Let's jump in. Today, we've got a stacked panel here. Between them, they have over 800 million in ad spend verified across Facebook, Google, TikTok, YouTube, and over 1.5 billion in tracked revenue. This is a stacked panel to say the least. So for today, what's your approach to staying compliant and navigating account bans, whether it's on Meta, Google, TikTok, and what do you do when you get hit, or what's your process?
So, pretty much three main pillars, let's say. So prevention, what do you do if it happens? And then obviously, what do you do after it happens, right? So first thing, prevention, copy. So you can honestly just, depending on your app platform that you're talking about, if we're just talking about Meta, all the policies are in the website, so you can read them all. In general, Meta just doesn't want people feel bad when they're seeing an ad, literally. So in general, so if you're not specifically calling out people, promising crazy things and making them feel bad about their health, their appearance, should be on the safe place. If you want very, very specific advice, all the policies are there. So I don't think it makes sense for us to just do a review of every single policy for every single industry, because everything is there. Having said that, that's one thing. Second thing, obviously, if you're doing statics and you have a team, you just have much more control in terms of prevention, because then it's mostly going to be the copy and it's not going to be a big deal. If you're doing a lot of videos, then there are all the visual elements that can flag the policy as well. So obviously everything that's nudity, everything that's sometimes showcasing too much cash and promising results visually and showing numbers on the screen, all of that, and obviously the spoken script as well, because the AI does translate your script and then analyzes the script, right? All of that can get flagged. The spoken script and the subtitles obviously have a higher chance of getting flagged than the visuals, unless obviously something completely explicit like before and afters, nudity, and stuff like that. That's a general overview. Now, what happens if you do get banned? And by the way, there's one specific hack nowadays that we do not get banned. It's because, it's just a way to run ads where you just don't get banned, even if you go very aggressive. But we can talk about this later. Having said that, if you do get banned, talking to support, having a plan B, so obviously contingency, right? You do need to have a contingency plan. So when you're running big amounts of money, unless it's very white hat, always work with the possibility that I might get banned someday, right? And I think if you ran ads for over 10 years, very likely you've had accounts banned or even a profile ban, right? Or even a BM banned as well, or at least restricted. So having a dedicated support, building relationships with the ad support, and always trying to escalate and having better and better and better support, because the low-level support people on Meta are not going to help you. Mid-level and obviously high-level can definitely help you and help you escalate. So it's very helpful. One thing. Second thing, contingency of BMs, ad accounts, and in a very, very, very high level, profiles. But if you get to profiles contingency, obviously you're already doing like gray hat by definition, because Meta doesn't want you to have multiple profiles. So you need to know exactly what you're doing. So I don't recommend having multiple profiles. What I do recommend, at least, is having one profile with multiple business managers and multiple ad accounts. That's the most white hat contingency plan, okay? Because having multiple profiles is obviously frowned upon. And if you don't get overturned, if you talk to support, if you have higher reps, if you have contingency plans, yada yada, if you don't get overturned, then obviously after that you just need to make sure to review your processes of copy of videos, run a different BM, or even go unfortunately to gray hat, because I know a lot of people who have always ran white hat all the time, including myself, and had their profiles shut off. Like I had my profile get restricted for the first time, I think it's 2017, and I was only running white hat. So I was like, what happened? I didn't break any policies, at least that I knew of, obviously, because a lot of it is just algorithmic reviews. And then obviously I just had to get a different profile. So immediately I was gray hat, because I depended on that. It was my living. And even though I was white hat, I had to get different profiles, right? So that's pretty much it. Prevention in those 2 or 3 pillars of having different ad accounts, obviously not running gray hat or black hat, and also trying to establish a relationship with support. these are the main things you should be doing.
And on that last point, how do you get support from these Facebook reps? Seems like sometimes they are impossible to get in touch with or build relationships with. Any suggestions or advices?
Most of it is obviously spending. The more you spend, obviously, they're gonna put you in tiers and give you more support. So a lot of it is they're gonna come to you, and you just need to make sure you're paying attention to your emails and to your messages, so you can actually talk to them when they come, and then you start building relationships with the low level support, and eventually try to escalate and do networking. I've seen people being able to do the networking. Obviously, this is harder and it's not the official route. So I've had a client in Google, for example, and that's for all ad platforms. Now, obviously, if you get access through other ways, not through the official ways, let's say, but if you have access to high-level supports, to insiders, if you go to networking events, in any industry, it works the same. You can get other kinds of support if you go outside of the official route. But if you just go within Meta as an advertiser, you just need to spend more. And when they contact you, you just build relationships. Literally.
Camila, what have you been seeing, or how do you go about staying compliant or navigating account bans when it happens?
I mean, I've actually worked in industry where it's pretty common with disapprovals. Like I've worked in cannabis, financial, health, and all that stuff. So that's really tough to get ads approved. So I've learned a lot from that. But going on what Antonio said, copy, creatives, all that stuff. The other thing to think about too is making sure your landing page is also compliant, right? So making sure you don't mention words that should not be mentioned, obviously, with that policy that we have, the guidelines for Meta, and also for Google. Google is not as tough. Google is, on that stuff, but obviously ad copy big thing there. So landing could be one thing. Also making sure your Facebook page, your Instagram, sometimes even that connected to the ad is also another problem where sometimes the ad account get banned because of, even if it's an organic post, right? If you're mentioning something that's not, that could also get your ad account banned indirectly. Obviously having good payment history, making sure you have a good credit card payment method, whatnot. So that's the other thing. And then obviously having a good, like, if ads get disapproved, sure, just kind of put it through review, but don't put it through review too many times. Don't put it through the same review too many times. If anything, create a new ad off of it rather than duplicating it, because the history will carry to it. So I would say those are probably the most general things to kind of go through in terms of making sure you don't get bad. You do obviously try to contact Meta rep if you have a Meta rep. And like Antonio said, try to build that beforehand, because sometimes when you go in the ad account, it pops up like, oh, do you want to call a rep or whatever? Take that call, build that relationship so that if later on you have these issues, you have somebody in the back end that can help you with it.
Would you say this is pretty consistent across various platforms, or are you more so referring to Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook would be the toughest. Mostly Facebook. Like with Google, it's not bad because with Facebook, with Google, you can still like bid on technically keywords that are not allowed to be said on ad copies, so it's not as strict. Google, obviously, same thing with Google. If you have a rep, it's also to go through that. Sometimes support is actually a little helpful, even though they're low level in Google. They're kind of still helpful in trying to get you through. Get the ads, and obviously, like sometimes you'll receive emails from those Google reps like, oh, I read your accounts and whatnot. Like, take that call with them too, right? Build that relationship with them as well. But generally, Meta is probably the toughest one in terms of getting ads approved and everything, just because there's just so much compliance with platforms.
Understandably so. And okay, you're deep on the Google side of things, and I'm curious to hear what's your approach for staying compliant or avoiding any type of account ban?
Yeah, I guess I've seen both sides, having worked in Google, having clients of ours contacting us frantically, panicking whenever their accounts have been suspended, and obviously now managing large accounts and now working with Google teams to help get certain challenges removed. A lot of the advice is similar. I would say the first point of protocol is understanding the policy regulations for the category that you're advertising in and trying as best possible to stay within those guidelines where possible. Certain categories, for example, like prescription drug services in the US is a category that you can serve ads in, but you need to be a certified pharmacy to do so. So therefore, before running any advertising in your account, you need to apply for the correct pharmaceutical certificates to give you permission to advertise on those pharmaceutical drug terms, Once you have permission and once the account has been verified, you can run keywords and ads against those terms, but your ads will be tagged with a limited status. The limited status doesn't mean it can't serve, it just means it's under that policy regulation, but it actually doesn't prevent it getting reach or exposure in terms of impressions. When something does go wrong, I have a pretty clear, what I say, 2 to 3 step process. Number one is to create a very clear and compelling case with support just through the normal Google support channels. Number two is to then very quickly escalate that case directly to your Google team, and then consistently follow up on that until they get it resolved. That obviously, again, as the guys have alluded to, depends on your spend level, the seniority of support that you have. We currently have direct access to Google large customer sales teams, both in the UK and US market, and therefore they are generally the best point of protocol to go to get a case escalated to the highest level of review. And that's very, very helpful because that direct path to review through essentially their internal GTech team gets a real person in either a US or UK based office to review the ad account and give you clarity on what the issue is and how to resolve it to get your account back up and running. Because typically the first response from Google's normal support channel will just be a straight up reason as to why it's rejected, with very little room for debate on the decision that's been made. So that escalation route is kind of vital if you want to actually get something back up and running for your account. But yeah, look, long and short, it's a challenging topic. On the other side, being honest, we try to veer away from heavily policy restricted categories or advertisers, or working with brands who are, I guess, in those gray zones, both just from an ethical standpoint and also from a longer term relationship building. I think when you work with Google teams, they're also much more supportive on legitimate e-commerce brands than they are on things like short term lending or finance, for example. And it's an example from my time internally in Google where they constantly made an effort to move away from providing as much support for some of those more shady industries, although they're often still let advertise. They don't get the same level of strategic support for those very reasons, because those industries are, I guess, not encouraged to be utilizing advertising.
Love it. And for everyone here, for those industries or niches that are a little bit more in the gray area, what are some other best practices or advices for, navigating that or avoiding anything bad happening to your account?
Scaling wise, I have a client that I'm spending $70,000 a day on Facebook right now, and they're mainly in the financial space. And the way we dance around compliance for that is using the special ads category, making sure that you're doing financial advertising on the checklist, because there's like 5 things on there: credit, housing, social and political issues. But making sure you utilize that setting is very important, because without it, you can get some ads through, but you can run into a lot more flags not using it. The only downside of not using it or using it is you don't have the option to target your demographic. So you're stuck with doing 18 plus, also stuck with not being able to target any interest audience or lookalike audiences. But you can get around that by just making sure your pixel's just fully set up. Your match rate is really high, or try to get it as high as you possibly can, capturing the IP address, the Facebook click ID, first name, last name, email, whatever you can. That's the best way to get around it, and determining the quality as well that are coming in through the conversions. So if you're running a campaign and it's not giving you the quality you want, that your ad is the reason why it's generating that quality, because you're targeting so broad. You want to use your copy as your navigation or as your targeting system. But that's the main way I dance around compliance on Facebook. And when you do lose an account, it's good to know some Facebook agents. It's good to know some agencies that can lend you accounts. So you can have multiple in your back pocket. It's good to have different pages as well. I've dealt with so many suspensions, and the best way that I can remember starting back over is by starting up an engagement campaign. So maybe spending about $5 to $50 a day around the topic you're going to be advertising for 7 days. And just getting a lot of positive engagement going in the account, and to your page. Also starting over with a new pixel, which I know sucks, but if you already know you're winning creative, you should be able to get right back to where you were fairly quickly within 7 to 14 days. And sometimes your account can still get suspended even with doing that. And if that happens, then like I said, it's good to know some high tier agents or some people that rent out accounts that do know those people.
Yeah, like for finance, make sure you kind of select that category for finance. Same thing with housing, employment. There's categories to be selected for those too. And just make sure your ad copy is not prompting anything like Antonio said. Make sure, like, for example, I just had a client that was doing GLP-1. Just make sure you don't mention like GLP-1 in ad, right? Because it's very direct medical related. Don't promise anything that's going to work. It's just, yeah. Make sure you're not promising anything. You're not, giving, like, oh, you'll make $500 if you sign up for this, whatever, right? So just don't make too many promises on that, and don't mention anything of body image, nothing like that, because that's definitely going to get you quicker than not. But yeah, it's very case by case. Sometimes you can slide through with some of those things, especially if you have like ad account history too. You could slide some of those things, but like if you don't have enough account history, they're likely going to be watchful onto your ad account.
Yeah, just echoing what the points that Camila has been reinforcing, but take care of the assets, right? Every asset has a quality score, literally. So page, BM, accounts, like even payment history, in a way, it's kind of an asset because I've had BMs with hundreds of thousands of millions of ad spend, but because of a few failed payments, shut down. Even with backups, literally, even with backups. So just Facebook is literally all the time in its algo trying to measure whether this page is legit and is a good, let's say, a good page for the ecosystem of Meta. If the payment history is a good indication of whether there's going to be a fraud or there's going to be literally, or just not going to pay the ads at some point. If the business manager is legit or not, if the ad account is legit or not, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you're going to see it happens in waves as well, right? So not only taking care of the engagement, taking care of the types of posts that your page has, if it has any flags, same thing for your ad account, but also a lot of times, and you guys who have been running ads in, let's say, great hat industries or highly regulated industries at least, you're going to see there are going to be weeks where you're going to be launching like hundreds of, like 100 ads, and you're not going to have any rejections whatsoever, or maybe you're going to have like 1%, 5%. There are going to be weeks where every 10 ads you launch, like 5 or 8 or even all of them get rejected. So pay close attention to that. So especially in highly regulated industries, we try to have metrics to measure this, to understand what's the rejection rate at that point. If it's high, we tend to be less aggressive and try to clean up the history in a way for a while. And then eventually we start testing slightly more aggressive language, even dancing around compliance, because we know it's going to increase the rejection rate again. So it's not going to be linear, right? It's not going to be, oh, now I'm whitelisted and I'm never going to get it rejected again, and vice versa, right? And also, even if you have an account that's getting a lot of rejections, you can probably clean up its history, and then eventually it might go back. So you don't need necessarily to rush to test different ad accounts, even though that's an alternative as well.
Love it.
I also just want to add, if you get too many negative comments to an ad, that's also another reason to get the ad ban. So also pay attention to the comments and make sure, like, if there's anything negative, at least respond to it at the minimum. Don't even try deleting it. Don't even do that. Respond to it. But yeah, if there's too many negative comments on an ad or a lot of ads, then it's also another thing that could get the ads ad account banned.
Simon, welcome on. You've obviously been very focused on the e-com side of things, been spending on various platforms. So what's your approach for staying compliant and avoiding getting hit with any account bans? And also, what's your process when you do get hit? I wanted to also ask about what's the best setup or kind of insurance for staying compliant? Like, do you recommend having burner accounts or burner profiles, or what's the best setup like in the actual ad account to ultimately stay as compliant as possible?
Yeah, on Google side, it's a little bit challenging because typically a lot of things will be linked back to your payment profile. So even if you try and have, for example, 2 different ad accounts for the one business, if they're under the same payment profile, Google will generally link those to the same business, and therefore your overall payment profile may be suspended. So trying to keep a clean account and a clean account history is actually, I think, very important on Google's side. The other option, which is obviously more complicated, but it's actually running two separate entities. So having two separate business entities with two separate payment profiles, two separate accounts in order to keep them separate. This is also a bit of a hack a lot of businesses will do if they, for example, have competing brands in the same category. Google are pretty strict on double serving policies. You're not allowed to serve two ad placements in the same auction in the same category. But if they're run through two separate entities, of course you can do so. And that allows you to pretty much monopolize a category or an auction. But it does have to be two legal separate entities and separate businesses in terms of how they operate. But yeah, like honestly, it's for me the most important element is keeping good relationship with Google and having escalation paths that you can go to get things reviewed effectively and get any potential suspension warnings removed as soon as possible. I think, as the guys have alluded to, Google are generally a bit more straightforward on what is and is not allowed, and I would say typically, once you stay within those parameters, you're at a lower risk profile of being suspended. And very often it's more relating to ad copy. So your keyword targeting is generally rarely the problem. It's more about what you say in your keywords and also what you include on your landing pages. Like there's a lot of things, for example, on Google Shopping that you have to have certain criteria around your, returns policies very clearly outlined, your shipping details. These kind of things have to be clearly listed on the product pages in order for it to be compliant from a shopping standpoint. So I think from Google's side, it's much more about understanding the policies and setting up both your website, your business, and your account to comply with them, as opposed to having, back-end hacks around how to deal with potential suspensions. I think Google is, I would say, much more challenging when it comes to setting up new accounts, when it comes to a data collection and loss of data from launching a new account from scratch versus utilizing your Google Pixel with all the data behind it. So I would really encourage people to try and keep things housed in one account where possible and only launch a second or new account if absolutely necessary.
Is that what you're also seeing, Lyndon or Antonio?
On Facebook, having backup accounts, like I said, I feel like it's really necessary because Facebook can sometimes just flag you and suspend you for any reason. So being prepared always is important. Using the same credit card, I would highly recommend switching or getting a new credit card, new pixels, new pages. Sometimes you have to pretty much pretend you're a whole new business in a lot of cases. For Google, I know it's way more complicated because if they catch you with another account, you get suspended for circumventing events. So doing everything that Ogie just said is pretty much what I agree with. New business, like you have to really go very detailed with Google after they suspend your account. But with Facebook, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. New pixels is super important. Starting off on the right foot is extremely important as well, in my opinion. So
yeah, right now for the big, heavily regulated clients I have or companies, at the highest level, they have whole structures with multi-logins, complete different profiles per BM, per accounts. As Lyndon said, just echoing what I said, different domain, different pages, different pixels, like literally any piece of information, including credit card, that Facebook can cross-match should be different, literally, right? So from the address that you put there, from anything, and I completely agree with what Ogie said. I haven't dealt with that for a long time in Google, just because I just have been specializing in Meta for the past year specifically. But from my past experience for Google, same thing. It was just much, much harder to do that on Google because they would cross-match with more diligence, probably, even at the company level, which makes it obviously much, much harder for you to be agile when actually trying to do this contingency plan. On Meta is pretty straightforward. What I can say for both of them at the highest level, which I don't recommend that you, when I mean highest level, is highest level of needing to have a contingency plan. So obviously, the best system is always prevention and avoiding losing accounts, ideally, if you can. But in some accounts, honestly, at scale, is just very hard to prevent, literally. Like if you run financial ads and you run at very high scale, like 50K a day, 100K a day, etc., it's going to be almost impossible to never have ads account shut down and all that. If you can, in most industries, by all means, don't do all that we're saying. Just prevention, right? Just avoid losing stuff because it's just much simpler and easier, even on a business standpoint, besides the ethical standpoint, right? So even on a business standpoint. But if you have to, what I mean, the highest level, there's a whole industry of being able to buy ad accounts, profiles, business managers, literally. You can buy all that. Typically, these suppliers also are experts in that, obviously, because that's their whole business. So they're also going to let you know, hey, you need to have a multi-login with separate profiles, separate cookies, and all the fun stuff. So that's why it's hyper complex. So if you need to, this exists. But please try your best to never need that because it's a nightmare.
And Simon, hopefully you can hear us now. Okay. Wanted to get your take on what's your approach for staying compliant and navigating account bans, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, etc. And then also what's your process when you do get hit?
Yeah, I mean, echo what Antonio was just saying, like prevention is better than cure, right? Like if you can not get yourself in that position to start with, then that's ideal. Something I've kind of been meaning to do, haven't got around to it yet. Probably don't have any clients in the super high risk category. We've got a few supplement brands, but outside of that, not too bad. But we're generating like a little Claude skill set or like an AI review tool to feed the ads before we put them into Meta or upload them to Google and get it to act as like a policy manager or, act as Meta policy, Google policy, etc. Just as like an extra layer of review before you get to that stage. But, I think you could probably train an AI agent pretty well, not just with policy, because I think the policy is a little bit stricter in their documentation than what they probably apply. But if you can feed it, hey, this ad has been approved and this one has been approved. Here are my new set of ads. Apply this to the policy, but also the history of the account so far. And I think you probably get a pretty good read on it that way. But I mean, honestly, in terms of process, it is just pray you've got a couple of really good reps in your corner that you can go to. I generally find that is the best and fastest way to get an account back on track. I had an account just recently that had been banned for over 6 months and, had consistently been told that we're at the end of the road. And then as I came across new reps, just kept asking the same question and eventually someone was able to get it done. So it is possible over time, but it's often not a quick process. But yeah, look, prevention better than cure. I don't know if we've spoken much about TikTok, but they're pretty heavy on their policy as well, and they're very quick to pick it up. Anything that you're running through TikTok Shop and like TikTok for products, that's a real minefield in terms of getting things compliant, particularly anything in like the supplement space, etc. So, like, definitely do your research first. Find out what TikTok wants from you, because if you go down the path of having lots of rejections, it's hard to overcome that, and the account gets flagged. And then I don't know if this has been mentioned, but actually I also don't know how effective it is, but I did have a rep tell me once you should delete every rejected ad from your ad account. As they come in, just delete them, get them out of there. You don't want a lot of rejections just sitting in the account, hovering around. So I'd definitely recommend just getting them out as soon as possible.
Go ahead, Lyndon. Saw you raised your hand.
Yeah. What he just said about if an ad gets rejected, just delete it. Like, don't even argue, just delete it, because something that's gotten me in trouble is going back and forth, like trying to make edits to a video or an image, and they just reject it again over and over. And next thing you know, you lose your account. So just delete it. Don't argue, move on, try to figure out a different angle or strategy or something. Yeah,
and I think very carefully about why it was rejected. I mean, most of the time we probably know, right? But if you put a video up, don't necessarily just go and change like the hook or something very small on it. Sometimes cut your losses and just go again with something different. Because as Lyndon said, it's just the risks are too great now. Obviously there's ways to work around it, but I mean, losing ad accounts absolutely can be a business breaker.
All right, appreciate you watching. So this is the type of stuff that we cover every single day inside of our Catalyst community. At MediaBuyer.com, we've spent over half a decade now vetting over 10,000 media buyers. Less than 1% get accepted. And the people that you just watched, that's just some of the media buyers who are leading this community and who you can get direct access to. They don't just look at your ads, they look at the entire business, their full stack, and they can look at the ads, funnels, offer, creatives, and they can tell you what's working, what's not, and what they would do differently. So if you want in, there's a link in the description below to join that. Either way, appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.